You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This Syracuse passing offense, as we have talked about through the first 2 weeks, it is elite. This passing offense is elite. They were clearly not on their A game. They weren't. They were missing Zeed Haynes, who was out with personal reasons, and Fran Brown didn't want to touch on it too much in the post-game press conference, but he's the number one outside wide receiver. He didn't play. Will Nixon, the backup running back, the Washington transfer, he looked pretty good through the first 2 weeks of the season. He did not play against Stanford. He, according to Fran Brown, has some sort of thigh bruise. So let's hope that he is ready to play for Holy Cross, but being honest, they probably won't need him for Holy Cross because Syracuse shouldn't have any problems with Holy Cross, you'd think, right? So they were missing a couple of weapons. They also were without true freshman 4-star Emmanuel Ross, although that's not a super big loss right now, but he had some sort of injury in practice a couple days before the game. So we'll monitor that one, but they didn't have him either. So that's 3 skill players that were out. For even more context, Oronde Gadsden, the All-American tight end, the best player arguably on Syracuse's entire roster, had 2 catches for 12 yards. And despite everything that I mentioned, Oronde Gadsden, 2 catches, 12 yards. Zeed Haynes, out. Will Nixon, out. Emmanuel Ross, out. All of those things, Syracuse had 339 pass yards against Stanford on over 8 yards per attempt. The Orange as a team overall with their passing offense is 4th in the country in pass yards per game. 4th. They have a top 5 passing offense in the country. They're also top 30 in yards per attempt. So this passing offense is elite, and they have a ton of weapons, even when you neutralize Oronde Gadsden, even when Zeed Haynes and Will Nixon are out. This passing offense can still get it done, and it wasn't even on its A game against Stanford. So that is encouraging. That is really encouraging that this passing offense, we learned that even when there are obstacles, even when there are hurdles, can still get it done. And ultimately, it put them in position to win this game. Kyle McCord, the last offensive play, Kyle McCord found Jackson Meeks for a slant route for a touchdown. It gave Syracuse a 1-point lead. The defense just couldn't hold. But now we get to the bad of the offense, and that is the run. And I actually said on Locked On College Football earlier in the week that, an offense can only do 2 things. You can only pass or throw. It's one of those 2 options on any given play. And this Syracuse run offense is not very good. Now, part of it is the offensive line. The offensive line through 2 weeks graded on Pro Football Focus a lot better in the pass protection than they did on run blocking. That is just a weird quirk. Now, the offensive line, for the record, didn't grade well in any aspect of the game against Stanford. They had their worst performance of the season, let up 4 sacks. But part of the reason why they can't really get their run game going is this offensive line has not looked great with run blocking to start the season. Through the first 3 games, Syracuse is averaging 95 rushing yards per game. Now, for some context for you all, because again, what is a number without context? That is 2nd worst in the ACC. Ouch, that's not very good. The only team worse than them is Florida State. You don't want to be anywhere near Florida State. I know they just beat Cal, but you don't want to be anywhere near them in any statistical category right now. They're not very good. And to be fair, Florida State's averaging less than 55 rushing yards per game. It's not even close. But still, 2nd worst in the ACC, only ahead of Florida State. Bottom 30 overall run offense in the country. So it's not good. And they're also not being very efficient with their runs either, averaging just 3.6 yards per carry. Typically, you want to be above 4 yards per carry. They're at 3.6. That's not great. I think also part of it is opportunity. Because a lot of the times with running the football, it requires more carries to really get it going. The best example of this is Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans. I know he's had his certain struggles or whatever with the Ravens, but back when he was in his prime with the Titans, okay? And you can even say when he was at Alabama. Derrick Henry can sometimes start a game and have 10 carries for 22 yards. But then he would finish the game with 20 carries for 100 yards. Well, what happened? They stuck with the run. They kept running. They didn't give up on it. And eventually, a guy like Derrick Henry is going to either break one or he's going to get chunk plays. So the point is you have to keep running the ball. You can't give up on the run. And I think with Syracuse, especially in this game against Stanford, they called the game like they were down by 3 scores the whole night. And they weren't. It was really, really weird to see. For more context on this opportunity thing, LeQuint Allen this season, I think from an eye test perspective, he looks good. He looks good. LeQuint Allen, through the numbers, is averaging 5.4 yards per carry. That's really good. That's really efficient. And last season was 4.3 yards per carry. So he's averaging through the first 3 weeks of this season a full yard more per rush attempt than he did last year. But what's the issue? He's only getting 13 carries a game instead of nearly 19 a game. So he's not getting the ball enough. Again, they're running pretty efficiently with LeQuint Allen, but if you're only giving him 13 carries a game, are you really going to be able to unlock the run? And against Stanford, he had 8 carries for 25 yards, but imagine if they didn't give up on the run. Maybe that turns out to be 15 carries for 75 yards. You don't know. I think that the takeaway from that is, has the run offense been great to start the year? No. But has the Syracuse coaching staff really given it a chance to succeed? In other words, I think they need to run the ball more. And then we'll really know whether it's truly struggling or if they're just not giving it enough opportunities. That is my takeaway on it. The passing offense looks great. They can sling it with the best of them. But the running game has not really been there so far through 3 weeks. Maybe you've seen a glimpse here or there, right? They closed out Georgia Tech with the big run. But overall, I think the coaching staff is giving up on it too early. And it hasn't been there so far to start the season. Hopefully, what they need is a cupcake like Holy Cross to get the whole run game going.